Dear brothers, good morning. Happy Wednesday. Episode 88 today, fellas. 12 away from 100. Wild. Wild. But we're going to get after it today. I'm excited to talk a little bit more. We're going to have a little bit more of a social media talk today, which is kind of crazy to think about. But I think that we're spending a little too much time doing a couple of things that I do myself. And I think it's probably worth us talking about them. So, trolling specifically, which I think is hilarious. It makes me chuckle, but we need to talk a little bit more about trolling and then reading troll comments. So, how many of you have been on your phones? Maybe you're sitting on the couch, you're at the store in line, maybe you're at work, and you're scrolling, seeing whatever the, algorithm's throwing at you. And then all of a sudden you get something that hits you real hard, catches your eye. And you read the caption and immediately you know that the comment section is going to be incredible. And so you go to the comments and it is absolute anarchy. There are bots and Karens and trolls, and maybe there's like a few well-meaning people, maybe, but overall it's an absolute dumpster fire of humans and maybe some robots and just digital yelling at one another. And some of these people have dozens upon dozens of responses and comments, and there are put downs and ad hominem or against the man attacks, aka something along the lines of, oh, anybody with that profile picture clearly has no grasp of politics, or, oh, must be hard to be that stupid when you're from the South. Whatever the attack is. It's got nothing to do with whatever the picture was or the point was. It's usually just attacking the person because people don't have anything better to do. And don't get me wrong, most of the time that stuff is hilarious to read. You get a good chuckle, you screenshot it, I text it to my buddies, we all get a good laugh and life goes on. However, I do want to take a second to address the overall time that gets spent on looking through comments or trolling other people and what have you. So I'm going to use myself as an example so that you understand this affects me just as much as it affects everybody else. And so maybe a week ago, I was in finishing my calls and I opened my phone, I started scrolling. Terrible, I know. And I happened upon this video of this lady who's doing an interview explaining that being fit was actually unhealthy. And she was vehement about it and said that all of our current science and data and research points to the fact that fit individuals are just less healthy. Naturally, that's a crock of shit. And naturally, I had to dive into the comments to get the reactions because they were bound to be funny. And as expected, they were hilarious. They were definitely mean in a lot of capacities, but most of them were relatively on point, but, still mean. Nonetheless, I was going comment by comment by comment, getting laughs in and trying to understand some of these people's logic or lack thereof, and it was just a trip. And I get out of that and I keep scrolling and found some more typical nonsense like that. And I even looked it up online and I look up and 2 hours has gone by. 2 hours, fellas. That's that's a 12th of the day. My math is right. I was just spending looking at comments and scrolling on my phone and I didn't even realize it. I'm a relatively aware individual and it happened in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, I had emails to get to, programming to write, podcast research to be done, laundry to do, workouts I could have done, time spent with the dogs, getting them outside, cleaning up our, house. The list of legit actions I could have been doing is marvelously high when I have several hours of time to do it. But there I was, getting some cheap laughs and dopamine hits in an unfortunately ignorant and likely confused human being who I don't know, I'm never going to meet, and whose life has absolutely nothing to do with my duties. All that I did was drain my battery, and I allowed myself to sink into the phone, let it take control. It's almost like you plug your brain in and you just head down this rabbit hole, and that's the end of it. And all of you know that feeling when you are done with one of those maybe 2-hour long social media binges and you want to do nothing afterwards. You want to just sit there and be lazy and order food and have a beer. You just don't want to do shit. Like, you actually feel like your battery's been fully drained. And so instead of doing anything, you just grab the phone and keep going. It is amazing how those kind of binges ruin your focus, ruin your mood. Realistically, you just feel empty when you're done with those. And all of you listening to this know what that means. And we have to stop doing that, fellas. All of us have complained, probably, I know I have, about not being productive enough or needing a break from work or whatever the issue is, about just not having enough time to do stuff. And we're all aware that binging on social is by no means improving your stress levels or productivity or your relationships or doing stuff around your house or being a good member of society. You're just losing our most precious commodity, which is time. We've talked about that at length on here. Time doesn't come back. And so I have two kind of thoughts on this today, fellas, that I want to get across. And the first is this. I actually agree that scrolling through some social media, through some, content is beneficial, especially if it enlightens you or educates you. I have made a very concerted effort to try and delete anybody that I follow or anything that I follow that's not advancing my life. I can't tell you how many great ideas and research and educational pieces that I have pulled from social media. Probably more YouTube than Instagrams and what have you, but still, there's a lot of good little snippets in there that can be very beneficial. But a lot of what you're getting is just garbage. It's just clickbait. It's just, I'm in the comments and I'm, scrolling and trolling and what have you. And so I would recommend that you really consider, when you're digesting content, make sure that it's good content, that it matters to you. Stuff that actually makes you think critically or educate or improve yourself in some capacity. Now, I'm not saying that you need to have nothing on there that makes you chuckle or whatever, but as a general statement, try by unfollowing the stuff that just doesn't mean anything, that's just useless, that's just blah, that's just wasting your time. That's number one. Number two, I have a little challenge for all of you, which I'm going to do with you. But I want you to go to the settings in your phone or just swipe down and click screen time. And I want you to turn off all of your social media apps after 15 minutes of usage a day. So you can go in and click Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and YouTube and whatever. And you can set it to 15 minutes. Whenever you hit 15 minutes of looking at any of them, not one individually, on your phone, it'll say, hey, you've hit your screen time for today for social media. You're done. And so think to yourself, for those of you, I would actually recommend looking at your screen time, because if you're like, oh my God, I'm spending an hour a day on Instagram, maybe start with 20 minutes or 30 minutes so that we're not going crazy here. But I really do recommend every day you get 15 minutes to scroll and use your phone and what have you. And when that thing goes off, when it says you're done, you're done. And so I would make a recommendation, if you're going to have social media for 15 minutes, actually use it for like research or to look up something, or like, hey, I'd really like to look up something that Jordan Peterson said, or I heard something on a great podcast, or I'd like to check on, something from Barstool Sports. I don't know. Whatever it ends up being, use it for that time. I'm not saying this necessarily for things like, especially YouTube, because there's so much education on there. I wouldn't tell you to do that. But if you notice that you're on YouTube looking up nonsense, then set the 15-minute rule. And I want you guys to commit to yourself that you're going to do that for at least a week. Just try it for a week and then reflect and go, hey, was I more productive this week because I decided that I was just going to kind of cut out some of the nonsense. When this can become a habit, you're going to be undefeated. And eventually, this is one of my goals. I'd love to have a time where I just don't need my phone on me. I have an Apple Watch that, people can text me and call me. And, there's what I really need to do is take like a week and just not bring my phone with me anywhere. I know I can't scroll on Instagram on my Apple Watch. So, the only time that I can look up stuff is if I'm at my computer and I'm at home. And I think that that's probably not a bad thing for all of us to start thinking about. So we just know that it produces more productivity. It's going to make you feel better about your day. You're also not going to just be wasting time doing stuff. And something that I also want you guys to think about, let's say that you give up your phone or you do the 15-minute thing and you're sitting there and you're bored. You're like, I don't know what to do. I usually would just be scrolling on my phone right now and looking at nonsense. Understand that you need to address that problem immediately. It's time to have a talk about it. If you can't find a way to fill the time in your day effectively, go read a book. Go do some research. Go journal. Go have a conversation at a coffee shop with somebody. Call a family member you haven't spoken to in a while. You probably have some kind of work that you can do. Your home probably could use a little bit of work. I don't know what the thing is, but if you notice that you're just like bored, you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I usually would just be scrolling on social media. That's a problem because you're literally just wasting time when you could be doing so many other things. This life is short. Go do something productive with it. I think we'll do that till, for a week. Let's give it till next Wednesday and let's see how everybody does. I'll keep you guys updated on how I do. But 15 minutes per day next week, do it for me. We're capable. I love you all. Big news coming out the end of the week. The podcast world is going to expand for myself. So, God bless you all. Be strong. Let's get after it, fellas. Happy Wednesday.